Satire for me is a way for self-expression. Usually, I think it's a little bit darker than just like comedy. For me, it is taking topics that are a little bit uncomfortable, that are a little bit controversial, and put it out there in a comedic way.
Bassem Youssef was featured on the Time 100 list in 2013 when he was the host of a popular satirical news show in Egypt. Trained as a cardiac surgeon, Youssef became the voice of a nation hopeful for greater democratic freedoms. But by 2014, it was clear his comedy threatened the military leadership in Egypt, and he was forced to flee. From doctor to satirist to immigrant and now actor, Bassem Youssef keeps finding a new voice.
As a child, I was a nerd. I was the top of my class. I ended up being a doctor. But even growing up, even being a nerd, I had some other hobbies. I played basketball, football, of course, soccer. And it was a very normal childhood back in Egypt. I always say, if you're in the Middle East, you're expected to be one of three things: a doctor, an engineer, or a disappointment. That is one of my jokes yesterday. I talk a lot about like how Arabs should be more represented in the media, but also I talk about how Arabs should be representing themselves in different ways here in the United States. That's why I do my stand-up comedy in English. It's a way that you speak to the community we're in so they know more about our stories. There is a thing with a lot of the Arab communities, because we are relatively new, that we are here, but we're still living there. We are like in between. We don't consider ourselves as like full immigrants, and we have this desire to go back someday. It just like makes it a little bit more difficult for them to feel more comfortable and more at home here. But I think it is changing, because now there's a younger generation coming up who are more Americanized, more comfortable being here as Arab Americans. There's a few differences between doing comedy in the Arab world and America. First of all, it's the language. And I believe that comedy follows language and language follows culture. So definitely the Arab world is much more restricted. So your language will be restricted and your comedy will be restricted. In America, there's much more freedom with the language, because there's much more freedom with the culture, whether the use of profanity, whether it's satirizing certain taboos. So the comedy is much more liberated. I think the louder the laughter, the more free people are. However, the bigger question is, where does satire stop? And it's a very difficult question to answer, because I think satire and criticism in general, you cannot really put a limit on. It's a free speech. Who can tell you that's acceptable or not? Because everybody thinks that they're special, and you shouldn't make fun of me, or my policies, or my ideas, or my religion. But where do you stop, right? And I think you just have to gauge it according to the perception of your audience. And it's up to you. You can lose your audience, and you can win other audience. It's really up to the comedian to draw his own line. And then he has to deal with the consequences.